All right, guys, this is kind of the fun part. So we went ahead and we finished coloring our printmaking, and I let it sit for a little while. Hopefully you put it in a safe place too, and there's not fingerprints all over. But if there is a little smudge, grab those markers that you used yesterday. I left mine out so I knew what colors I had, and go ahead and touch up any areas that you need to. Okay, the next step we are going to do is we are going to use sketchbook paper. You can also use like computer copy paper. Don't use any of the other papers in your kit because we're going to make a lot of prints and we don't want to burn through all of our really good paper. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take a fresh sheet of sketchbook paper and just rip it out. Look, I actually got a couple, it feels like, here. Okay, so I'm going to put my sketchbook aside. I've got a couple pieces of paper. I'm going to move one out of the way for now. I also have a rag, and it is damp. By damp, I mean like if I squeezed it, a little bit of water would come out, but not a lot. And I went ahead and grabbed a bowl to put it in so my workspace wouldn't get so messy. Make sure today you are working at the kitchen table or somewhere parent approved where you can make a mess. You shouldn't make a huge mess, but just in case, since we are using water today, we want to make sure we stay as clean as possible. All right, so I've got my print, but I'm going to kind of push this off to the side. The important part is that you actually have to work a little bit kind of quickly today. So I'm going to explain it, then I'm going to do it, and then I want you to do it. I don't want you to try to do it at the same time as me. You need to watch all of my steps all the way through. So we are going to take our rag, and we are going to wipe our paper, okay? I haven't done it yet. We want to make sure that our paper is wet enough, but not soaking wet. We shouldn't see puddles. And we don't want it like just sort of wet. That won't work either. It's got to be wet, but not puddle wet. So we're saturating the paper with our damp rag by wiping. So now I'm actually going to go ahead and do it. And I'm pushing kind of in the same direction as I go. And my sketchbook paper is starting to get thin. That's okay. That means that the water is in there. Now it will get kind of flimsy, so leave it on the table. All right, and then I gotta work quickly. And I'm gonna take my printing plate. I'm gonna carefully flip it upside down, drop it in the center, and now I'm gonna use my fist, and I'm gonna rub, 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 rub. So what we are doing now is we are essentially transferring the marker from your print to the wet paper. So the wet paper is activating the marker, hopefully, if this goes all right. I'm a little concerned that maybe my paper wasn't wet enough, but we'll see. And notice that I haven't touched the styrofoam yet. I'm still rubbing. I would rather have you rub too much than not enough. If you don't rub enough, then your print does not turn out very well. All right, so I've double checked that I've kind of gone everywhere. I've made my corners good. My paper's probably starting to dry anyways. Here's the magic part. Drum roll, please. Dig, 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 dig. Ah! It worked! I'm really excited. So I thought it was going to be too dry, the paper, but it looks really, really great. So it does look a little like grayed out right now, and that's just because the paper is wet. Okay, so we got a nice clean print. So now you can see that where we indented, where my black lines are of the Sharpie, look, it's symmetrical. We're using our vocabulary. Okay, so I can kind of line this up and show you that where we indented with the pen is now white on our paper. Where we colored, the color transferred. So this is going to give you a good idea of how this all works, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and peel this one and put it somewhere safe to dry. And then I want to show you what can happen with what we call a ghost print. So I'm going to go ahead and wet another piece of paper. My washcloth's getting a little dry, so after this next one I'll need to go wet it again. My bowl's in the way, that's all right. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip my print over. Now notice it's a lot lighter, right? Most of the marker is gone. So a ghost print is basically printing anything that remains on the printing plate after the first print. That's called a ghost print, because it's kind of ghost-like, because it's sort of see-through. So again, our styrofoam is called the printing plate. Printmaking can be done in many different ways. It can be done in wood. It can be done in like a rubbery substance. That's what we do in the junior high, where we carve out our prints. but you're doing another version of carving by tracing and indenting into the styrofoam. All right, so I've rubbed really good. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up, and you don't see very much, okay? And that's kind of why it's called a ghost print. It's almost to help clean your printing plate more than anything and get any residue off. So ghost prints are usually not what you're gonna turn in for a project, but sometimes they can look kind of cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that off to the side. I'm gonna grab my good print again and we'll talk about it for a second. So it's really flimsy, so you wanna make sure you put this somewhere safe to dry and let it dry flat. The paper might curl up a little bit, but once the paper is dry, you could put a book on top and then hold it down. But don't do that while it's wet, because then the marker is gonna come off from the paper. We wanna keep this somewhere safe to dry, okay? Now, here's the cool part about printmaking. You can do this over and over and over again by repeating our steps from yesterday and today. Taking markers, coloring our design, letting it sit for just a little bit. It doesn't have to sit too long. It really doesn't. It's okay. Getting our damp washcloth, getting some paper, wiping down that paper, flipping over the colored plate, and then rubbing with our fist. And you can print over and over and over again and get a ton of different results. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to print one more today using a completely different color scheme, and I will take a picture of that and show you on our slide when I share the project with you. All right, so your goal today is to do at least one successful print, but then you're going to get another extra day to print whatever you want as many times as you want. But now you know how to do this. And here's the cool part, guys. This styrofoam, you can find this in everyday places. The meat that your parents sometimes buy at the grocery store comes in styrofoam trays like this a lot of times, and if it gets cleaned off really nicely, you can use the backside of that meat tray and you can make from home with it. So it's really kind of cool. This is not from Meat Trays, I promise. It's fresh from the art store, but you can easily do this at home with supplies that you already have. All right, guys, have a good one.